In at number 10, Entity 303. Now this creepypasta describes a terrifying encounter with a hacker in one of the Minecraft servers. Hackers alone are creepy. Combine them with 3D people made of blocks and I'm out of here. So the first encounter begins with an email from a player named Frankie. He goes on to describe a game of Minecraft he was playing with a group of friends. They were all communicating via Skype while working on a big city build and game. Now during this time, a few of them noticed something odd in the chat. An unidentified player had typed "stop," the code to shut down the server. Now they were playing at a private server, so it's essentially impossible for another player to be there with them, unless that player is a hacker. They checked the control panel but it showed only their usernames, no one else's. Odd. They decided to ignore it and continued on with their game, until they caught a glimpse of a white figure in the distance of the desert. They fell silent. Frankie noticed that one of his friends wasn't moving and also wasn't speaking in chat. Assuming it was just lag in the game, he didn't take too much notice, until they disconnected from the server. Before Frankie could panic, his screen began to glitch and the chat started spamming the phrase "object successfully summoned by player number 303. While all of this is happening, Frankie notices that someone else has joined their Skype chat, an unknown contact. The unknown requests to put on FaceTime. It's too dark to make them out, but they begin to speak, saying, "Make a wish and say goodbye to your friends." The Skype call drops and Frankie's computer shuts off. The next day only one of his friends is at school. Concerned, he gets in touch with his friend's parents. One of them, John, had committed suicide, leaving a note that read, "I can't take this anymore. I can't sleep. I'm afraid he's watching me. I can't live like this knowing someone is after me, wanting me to die a slow, painful death. I'm sorry, Mum. I love you." On the bottom corner of the page was a phrase in small text that he could just make out. It said just 3 words: "Make a wish." In at 9, Luna. Our author begins this creepypasta by describing how 2 weeks ago he was working on a statue in his house in-game when he heard footsteps behind him. He turned, but nothing was there. He continued working on the statue's head, but could still hear the sound of footsteps. He turned quicker, this time, but still nothing. He figured this was down to an in-game error and ignored it. By nighttime, he had finished the statue and quickly went into his house to get away from the noises and footsteps, fearing there was a hostile mob hunting him down. He clicked the bed, and his character began to sleep. His PC then shut off with a boom and a blank white screen. After a few moments, it turned back on, but the game was frozen. After a while, it went back to normal, and not wanting to go outside, stayed in his house. He then got teleported outside. His character was now staring at his front door. Weird. In a panic, he tried to enter, but the door was locked from the inside. He looked around and up at the night sky. It was then that he saw the moon, but it wasn't a normal moon. It was now retextured as the moon from Majora's Mask from Legend of Zelda. The moon began to grow, bigger and bigger, spurting fireballs before a chat popped up from the moon itself. It read, "All will die. Luna is the only powerful demon there is." The game then crashed and the player was transported to a new world, named Error Unknown Name, and that's where our creepypasta ends. In at 8, 1241. This creepypasta comes from a user named Jack. He was playing a single player world, trying to find obsidian to get to the second world of Minecraft. He mined a cave for a few minutes until he found obsidian. He grabbed some blocks and exited the cave, running back to his house. However, his house was not how he left it. It was previously made of cobblestone and wood, but it was now made from nether bricks. He entered the house, but it was empty, except for a shulker box containing a book. Confused, he realized someone must have entered his world, perhaps a friend playing a joke. After a few more minutes, a player enters his server with the username 1241. After attempting to remove the player, Jack's computer crashes. He reboots his computer and re-enters the game, hoping the player has been removed. When he spawns, he's in the nether, but there's another person with him, staring at him from a distance. Take a look for yourself. After, Jack closed the game and deleted his save file. I guess we'll never know who player 1241 was. In at 7, Exception. This creepypasta comes from an unknown user who began playing the game after a number of years away from it. This is where things start to get a little odd. He reached the 6th night when he discovered some lava source blocks placed randomly around the game, one being next to his house. He collected them with a bucket, but they began to respawn until there was around 13. He ignored it, thinking it was a new feature added by the devs. Veteran creepypasta readers will know this is never the case. He continued to expand his house and then went mining for additional parts. Halfway down, he discovered some cobblestones that was blocking his path, which he was positive he didn't put there. He used a brand new axe to break through the stone, but it broke on first hit. At this point, he began to grow suspicious, believing the game may have a bug. He started to notice a few other odd features. Forests were sparse, torches would disappear, and random fires would ignite around him. He posted in a Minecraft forum hoping to find some answers, but received none, until he got a private message from another user who had experienced something similar. He thought it odd that that only 2 people in the community would have experienced this. After talking with the other user, they began to realize that they weren't alone in their worlds, and that there was some kind of entity stalking them. They created a game together to see if the weird happenings would still occur, and that they did. At one point in the game, a code on 9 different signs spawned in the middle of nowhere, reading 010010101001, and so on. They created a new server from scratch and the same issue arose. The same signs spawning out of nowhere and random fires igniting their homes. During one of their games, our author turned around and saw something new. A thing. Something at the end of a mine shaft. He tried to screenshot it, but then his game froze and crashed. After this, he realized there's an entity, destroying worlds repeatedly, stalking innocent players, and harassing them until their world is nothing but dust. In at 6, Darkness of the Farlands. This creepypasta comes from a player who was checking out a single-player Minecraft beta. The player knew of a glitch that when entering a particular set of coordinates, the game would glitch and present you with a completely new set of landscapes. Pretty cool. During this, something caught his eye. In an area of the map covered in ice, he noticed a pattern that resembled a face. He moved on, thinking it's stupid to be frightened of a face. He paused the game to look up coordinates for a place called Farlands, a place where most players don't go because their computers can't go past it. Bored by the lack of glitches or lag, he jumped onto another game, but this time accidentally hit multiplayer. He wasn't alone though. A new player joined his server with the username Farman. He had black skin and a face like lava. Farman began to type, "Searching sessions ID database found. UUID tracked." The player realized this must be some kind of hack. He attempted to kick him out of the server, but quickly found he was no longer the owner. Farman began to type again. I quote, "Commencing FTP access breach. Complete. Wiping out files." End quote. His computer went black. He tried to restart it, but nothing. Then a message popped up. "Why did you try messaging with the lands beyond human reach?" The player restarted the computer again. This time it boots up normally. Everything was normal except for one text file on his desktop that read, "I'm not finished." In at 5, Shadow of Israphel. Now before we proceed, I should say this was scripted content by the guys over at Yogscast. That does not lessen the creepy nature of this pasta. This was a 27-part series, so for the sake of time, we're going to just focus on the main arc of the show. Okay, ready? This series is set in a fictional land of Minecraftia, where Zyphos and Honeydew, 2 fictional characters, encounter a handful of angry mobs and cows, because, of course. Through their trials and tribulations, they become worshipped by the citizens of the land. Then they must battle against an ancient evil named Israphel, and later on in Season 3, must fight against his cult. Because cults are trending right now, guys. Okay, cool, done, let's move on. In at 4, The Legend of Golden Brine. The user begins by describing how much he had been wanting Minecraft for his birthday, and like any millennial these days, he got it. Yay. He booted up his computer and clicked on the latest version of the game. He loaded into his first world but felt weird, as though something was lurking around him. He brushed it off and continued to play. However, instead of trees, there were golden towers. He ventured out and eventually found some hidden trees. He cut them down and figured he now had enough to build a house to survive the first night. He ended his game there for the night, but then when he went to bed, he still had that eerie feeling, like something wasn't quite right. The next day he booted up the game, still feeling the lurking presence of something unknown. He spawned in and discovered multiple golden blocks in the shape of a cross, but not any cross, an upside down one. He entered his house to clear out stuff, but quickly realized everything was gone. All that was left was gold and golden blocks. Before he could react, TNT landed on his roof and blew it up. Classic. He respawned, but not back to where he died, but this time to a golden room, and across from him was a yellow player. The player began to type 01001111 and so on. Sound familiar? He attempted to quit the game, but nothing happened. The entity began to raise its head. He stared, motionless. After a few minutes, the entity began charging towards the player. But before he attacked, the ground under him broke and he fell into the void. The game then crashed. He tried to load back in, but an error popped up with one word. Gold. In at 3, Null. Our author begins the story by describing the rumors he had heard about the legend of Herobrine, who we will be touching on later, but had never encountered him in a game yet. This was until the devs released a new version that allowed players to revisit past versions of the game. So he did. That's when Herobrine showed himself. The player was walking through the forest when he saw a torch out of the corner of his eye. Thinking it was a joke the devs included about Herobrine, he ignored it. When the player reached his house, there was a sign with just one word on it. Null. Assuming null meant not available, he assumed it was another joke. Guys, when will you learn there are no jokes in Minecraft, just horror stories and cows? Out of nowhere he heard a loud noise. Turning around he saw Herobrine again, and then his game quit. He emailed the devs to see what was up, and a few months down the line he received a response that read, "We cannot say anything discussing the matter of Herobrine." Great. Cool. He stopped playing the game for a while but eventually returned to it. He discovered another torch followed by another sign that had Swedish writing posted on it. He translated the text, which read, "Help. Null is here. Tell everyone about me." The player turned around and once again there he was, Herobrine. He started to type, "I need help. Do you remember playing during the golden age of Minecraft? Do you remember the man? The one who was as black as night itself? Do not take this monster lightly. I am trapped. You can blame him. I am feared upon, being a very evil entity, but I'm not. That man you've seen before, he is different. He is evil." And that's where it ends. So, who is Null? And did Herobrine put him there? Is an entity out there trapping innocent players in the game? I guess we'll never know. In it too, Herobrine. This classic creepypasta begins with a player chopping down trees. Amongst the fog he notices something moving. It was another character, one with a default skin, but his eyes were empty. Firstly, the player was in a single player mode, and secondly, there is no skin with empty eyes, which is really just a damn shame. Anyway, the player continued on, but began to notice things that appeared out of place. Tunnels in the rocks and small pyramids made of sand. The player, spooked, posted on a Minecraft forum detailing his experience with the game and the creepy man, but it was immediately deleted. He then received a private message from a user named Herobrine that said just one word: stop. He went to click on Herobrine's page, but it no longer existed. He began to receive more private messages, but this time from players who had experienced the same thing. After some research, they realized Herobrine was the name of the developer, Notch's brother. They sent him an email asking if he had a brother. The response was not what they expected. It read, "I did, but he is no longer with us." Spooky. And finally, in at number 1, Gigabyte7. This post, written by Enderchas, details how he was playing a regular single player world in Minecraft. Everything was normal until blood randomly appeared on the ground. Real blood. He continued playing the game but with slight fear, and that's when he saw blood leading down into a cave. He followed it because, of course, he entered the cave, placing torches along the way. As he got deeper down, he began to hear laughter. Evil laughter. Scared, he turned around and ran to the entrance, but it was now closed and had a sign in its place that read, "You are trapped." It was then that he saw someone. They began talking to him through his headset, saying, "There is no escape. I am Gib7, Minecraft's greatest hacker. There is no way to get rid of me." The player began to choke, coughing up blood. He mustered a sentence, "What are your intentions?" The hacker responded, "To kill you." Nope. No thank you, that's all I can handle today. In at 10, Green Steve. Now this creepypasta is a classic, and although debunked, I still think it deserves a place on our list. Created by Chicken78, they detail their experience playing Minecraft on the 1.8 update. They found a desert temple, breaking down the blue block and jumping down the hole. The player attempted to set off some TNT, but it didn't work. Then a Steve-esque character jumped down, only he was green. He hit the player before the room began to fill with creepers. Freaked out, the player quit the game and returned to it the next day. Thankfully, he was no longer in the creeper cave, but he was in a forest. A message began to pop up on his screen from Green Steve. It said, "I am coming." He found a house and immediately went in, but Green Steve appeared behind him, saying, "Hello, brother." The player then blew up. He deleted the world and immediately contacted the Minecraft devs. They responded by saying that one of the devs wanted to add Green Steve to the game, but they said no, but they caught him doing it anyway. Creepy. There are a handful of videos of Green Steve online. Take a look. In at 9, Ember420. This unnamed user describes a creepy experience battling an ender dragon. They were heading for their stronghold for their boss fight. Entering, they noticed the portal sound was not the one they were accustomed to. It sounded like a scream. They also noticed that above them it was just air, no end stone. They began to climb anyway, heading for the end fountain, and in the distance they spotted the ender dragon flying straight towards them. Before the fight, the player had prepared, sharpening their sword to 1000, which would deal 500 damage. Knowing the dragon dragon had only 200 health. This should have been an easy battle. However, the player swung their sword, but the dragon only dropped to 50% health. The attack should have easily killed it. The player then pulled out their bow, shooting 20 arrows per second at the beast, and began to glitch, spinning around unlike the normal death animation. After a few moments, it halted, and the player noticed their own health bar had dropped to half a heart. They ran towards the end portal, but before they could leave, they looked up. Instead of a dragon egg, there was now a sign in its place. It read, "Woe to the player that has angered Ember 420. Confused, the player jumped through the portal anyway, but instead of credits, another message popped up. Banned for 10 minutes, written in blood red. It also went on to read, Ember 420 is after you. Ember 420 is here. I'm here. The color then changed from red to gold and it displayed one last message. I am Ember 420. In at 8, Abandoned. This creepypasta is short but still very effective. Our author describes being bored one day, so he jumped onto a game of Minecraft, as you do. He clicked on the play button looking through his worlds, but one jumped out. It was labelled Abandoned. He couldn't recall ever creating it, but decided to click on it anyway. Everything appeared normal except the sky was darker than usual. Ignoring it, he began to collect wood and craft swords. He made a house and a bed and went to sleep. However, when his character woke up, he was in a different room. It was completely dark with a sign that read just one word. Abandoned. He decided to send his character back to bed, hoping things would revert back to normal when he woke up, but this time he spawned into a dark hallway. He could only walk. As he reached the end, a black shadow emerged. It started to run, faster and faster until it was almost directly in front of him. Right before it reached him, the player was kicked out of the game. Guess we'll never know what the shadowy figure wanted, or what would have happened if the game hadn't booted him out. In at 7, Jim. Posted by Will Zombie, this creepypasta describes how he was checking out his Minecraft world, Creepland. He began to mine for ores, and while doing so his friend Peter asked to join the game. Not wanting to go in the mine, the player met Peter outside. Thunderstorms began rolling in, so they both ventured back to the player's house. However, on the way to the house, Peter completely disappeared. He checked to see if he was still in the world, but he was gone. Suddenly he heard a crackling noise. The back of his house was on fire. Knowing there was no way to put it out, he went to the nearest cave to seek shelter. Peter then re-entered the game, explaining that his game had crashed and he was booted out, but only after he caught a stone block move out of the corner of his eye. The two decided to split up in an attempt to figure out what caused the fire and the moving block. The player then stumbled across a stronghold, telling Peter about it as he got closer. Peter was gone though. Scared, the player ran into the stronghold, and there in front of him was a sign that read, Jim is here. He then heard an ear-piercing noise coming from the other side of the door. He opened it and bam, his game crashed. Who is Jim and why is he sabotaging players' worlds? In at 6, He Sees You. This creepypasta comes from Block H1234. They tell us the story of jumping into Minecraft 1.8 and creating a new world called My Survival World. As the world loaded up, he noticed a blacked out figure in one of the caves. Ignoring it, he continued on, chopping down trees to build a crafting table. But while he was doing that, he was overcome with a feeling like someone was watching him, and turned around but no one was there, just some sheep and cows. He ignored his gut feeling and started building his own house, and then went on the hunt for a cave. Found one on the mountain and ran towards it, mining iron, coal and cobblestone. But as he attempted to leave, the exit was blocked. He created another exit instead and successfully managed to get out, beneath the sun and blue sky. But this wasn't real, it was just his imagination. It was the middle of the night and he could see hostile figures coming towards him. He ran towards his house as fast as he could to escape the mob. He went to sleep, but before he did, he saw a shadowy figure watching him from a distance through his window. The next day he went to investigate, finding a sign that read, I see you. The player then heard screaming coming from his own house. He went to the hallway to investigate but heard nothing. He went back to his computer, but his character was now trapped inside a bedrock chamber. A black figure stood in front of him. It got closer and closer and closer before a message popped up that read, I'd be running if I were you. Then the player's bedroom door flew open and a black figure appeared with yellow eyes. The next thing he knew, he was in the hospital. The doctors had told him he had fallen off a cliff. Freaky. In at number 5, 11. This pasta comes from an unknown user who was playing on a private Minecraft server. He had finally reached the end, surrounded by a vast ocean. He was equipped with diamond equipment and began to attack the dragon, easily defeating it. He collected the egg and ventured back home. The end music played and he spawned back in his stronghold. However, things weren't quite right. The music he had left playing was no longer on, but had now been replaced by 11, a nightmare-inducing soundtrack. Soon after, a message appeared on the screen. 11 had joined the game. A message from 11 then popped up. The world will fall. Chaos, order, the past, the future. To one of these, the world will fall. Creeped out, the player requested to teleport to him. 11 accepted. He then spawned inside a mansion with massive spires and ice falling from the ceiling. There stood 11. His skin was generic, he had oversized eyes and a diamond sword on his back. The odd thing though was that his eyes were completely black. 11 then began typing in Latin. Thankfully, our player knows Latin, because don't we all? He translated some of the text that read, "All praise." However, it was the last piece of text that shook our user. 11 wrote his real name. Creepy. In at 4, Little Piggy. So this very weird creepypasta was posted by Frankie about an incident that occurred a few months prior. He was living with his parents and his 6-year-old brother Justin. During Justin's birthday, their mum gifted him with a Minecraft toy, a pig plush. Justin named it Little Piggy. How cute. During the night, Frankie was playing GTA 4 on his computer when Justin came in telling him that he had lost Little Piggy already. Frankie grabbed a flashlight and they went downstairs together, searching each room for the toy. They reached the kitchen, but Frankie felt uneasy, like something wasn't quite right. The air was bitter and Justin began to shiver. They then heard footsteps. Turning around and shining the flashlight, they saw nothing. Then out of the silence they heard oink. They reached the dining table and there he was, Little Piggy sitting on the table. He hugged it and then they heard it again. Oink. Frankie looked down at the pig, but it was now gone, and so was Justin. He tried to turn on the lights, but they quickly shut off. Heading down to the basement to find the generator, he heard a cry for help. He ran around the basement that had filled with fog, but Justin was nowhere to be found. Out of the darkness, he heard grunt over and over again, sounding more like a boar than a pig. Scared, Frankie, forgetting about the generator, ran up the stairs and stumbled into Justin's room. He turned around and saw it. A boar with long tusks and glowing red eyes. He ran towards it, hitting it repeatedly with his flashlight until the grunting ceased. Behind the boar shook Frankie to his core, Justin's lifeless body. In at 3, Name Data. Posted by Dark Wither, this user describes playing a game of Minecraft with a few of their friends. Walking around, the player was going to meet up with their friends, but they weren't responding. They checked to see if they were still in the chat, but it said they had all been killed by the same user. Name Data. Not worrying too much about it, they ventured on through a forest before finding a village. They had 4 emeralds and traded 2 for a diamond sword. Steal. They eventually fell asleep in the librarian's house. Waking up, there was now a church outside that wasn't there before, and a name tag inside that they couldn't quite make out. Thinking it was one of their friends, they got closer to the church, and the name tag became clearer. It read, Name Data. Getting closer, they realized there was a second name tag labeled this. They went inside, seeing it was a skeleton, but Name Data was nowhere to be found. They went outside and there it was, Name Data running away. The player chased after it. It eventually stopped and turned around. It had typical skin but with dark eyes, then started screaming. The game then glitched and crashed. As it shut down, a message appeared on the screen. Name Data is coming to your house to kill you at 3 AM. The player shut off their computer and never played it again. Classic. In at 2, Player 51. This user details playing on a private Minecraft survival server. He was collecting wood with a few friends for their house when he noticed some obsidian blocks floating in the sky. They used cobblestone to build up to them, but as they reached them they disappeared, causing the players to fall to their deaths. When they respawned, the player's friend said there was an error sign in the area. He went over to investigate but found nothing. They continued on, completing the house, but after the player checked the server to see who placed the blocks and sign, he found an entity named Player 51. He clicked back onto the server, spawning inside a small room, entirely made up of obsidian blocks. He quickly realized he was the only player in the server, so he exited and started a new single player game. Once again though, he was spawned into a small room filled with obsidian, but there was now a door. He opened it and it led him into the actual world. It began to get dark, so he mined a small room in the mountain and went to sleep, but as soon as he did, he heard the door in his room open. When he awoke, it was closed. The next day he began to craft new tools, but on his return to his shelter he had footsteps approaching from behind. He turned around to see a dark figure with white glowing eyes. He chased after it. It turned and attacked the player with an iron sword. The game then crashed and a message appeared. Die. And finally, in at number 1, a friend. An unnamed user described staying up late one night and hopping onto a Minecraft server. He logged in, clicking edit to view some new snapshots. Ignoring the disclaimer, he saw the latest snapshot. Instead of the typical numbers, it said Friend Edition. Finding it odd, he downloaded it anyway. It took 42 minutes to download, much longer than usual. It eventually loaded up and he jumped in. He noticed the world seemed far more beautiful than before, as though the game had improved, or as though he was using a resource pack but he knew he wasn't. He clicked on his inventory but found nothing, so he decided to delete it. Instead, jumping into a world he had been working through for a while. He began to mine for iron, but eventually discovered something he'd been hunting for a while: diamond ore. He mined it and then quickly discovered another one. He had hit the jackpot. He mined and then rushed to exit the cave he was in. Only sand began to rush down, trapping him in. He attempted to mine his way out, but the stone was acting like bedrock and it began to fade to a dark texture. He wanted to exit the world but was too scared. Within the cave he began to hear footsteps, getting closer and closer and closer. He stopped, unable to move, before a humanoid player began to approach him with an emo-esque skin. A name tag appeared that read, Friend. The stranger typed, "Is this your world?" He responded, "Yes, why?" The stranger responded, "Liar, this is my world. I own this place." He stood there before being engulfed in the darkness. The bedrock then changed to endstone and the player was able to mine himself out, before he heard a deafening stomping in the cave. A purple boss bar appeared and the name said, Friend. Spikes began to appear, almost impaling the player, and the fireballs flew out of the stranger straight towards the player. He ran towards the stranger, swinging his sword, but no damage was taken. The stranger charged, knocking him down, leaving him with half a heart. One last fireball was thrown before the player died. Instead of the typical "you died" screen, this one was much darker and more sinister. The stranger was holding the player's head on a stick. Exiting the game, he attempted to jump into one of the other worlds, but they were all on fire, sabotaged by the stranger. Going back to his game, there were files labeled Friend. He immediately deleted them, and returning to his files, a new world appeared that said, You. He clicked on it and text appeared. It read, You tried to delete me. Why would you do such a thing? There's only one place where you belong. They engaged in one final boss battle, our player getting defeated once again. His game crashed and he went to bed, hiding under the covers before hearing a voice in his ear. You were just like my other victims, weak and fun. Thank you.
Starting us off, Herobrine. Herobrine is another riff on the famous Herobrine creepypasta of sorts. Now, the author of the story starts off by saying that they're a hacker. Not an evil one, but someone who likes to go into other people's worlds in Minecraft and see what they're up to. Like a voyeur of sorts. He's seen a lot of stuff, but on one particular hacking session, he saw something that stuck with him for years. He hacked into a server, spawning into a world close by to where those on the server were playing. The coding he used allowed him to be pretty much invisible. It did not alert the other players of his presence, so they had no idea that he was there. When he spawned onto this world, he saw 9 different players. Their names? The Prince, Wagon Step, 5Thy44, Bradling, Thy Tenor, AABB567, Fivertown, Linko, and Thinope. All of them had diamond armor. 3 of them were on horses, 3 of them were on mules, and 3 were on donkeys. They kinda looked like pros. Intrigued, he watched them. Just up to typical business though. Mining, building, creating. But then, out of nowhere, they just split up. The 3 groups based on steed. Curious, he decided to follow them, going after the mule group first. He listened to their audio. They were going on about a hole that they had dug, not being able to find it or something. That's when out of nowhere, dispensers appeared, and the players were shot at. One of them used an ender pearl to quickly escape, and the other 2 weren't so lucky, being knocked out. That's when something weird came out of the forest nearby. It looked like Alex, but had a trait that the hacker had heard about from very familiar stories: the eyes of Herobrine. Herobrine. He watched as Herobrine slaughtered them all, then disappeared. Scared out of his wit, the hacker typed in some code and found himself now following the trio on donkeys. He watched them for a while, until all of a sudden, much like the dispensers, a bunch of TNT appeared out of nowhere and exploded. That's when Herobrine appeared again and more TNT went off, killing all of the players on donkeys. The hacker knew what was next. He typed in some code only to find himself with the players on horseback. And he was right. He couldn't hear what they were saying, but from afar he saw one of them, the prince, step on a pressure plate. The weird thing was, when he stepped on it, nothing happened, just the familiar noise that came with the pressure plate. But that's when their audio kicked in. They were all laughing about it, with the prince going over the pressure plate again and again and again as a joke, until kaboom! Hundreds of TNT went off. All the hacker could see through the explosion was an ender pearl being thrown. When the dust cleared, only the prince was left. But he started running, and ran past the hacker, invisible to the prince's eyes. And that's when he saw it. Alexbrine coming out of the trees. She shot the prince with an arrow. The prince went down and began to turn into a zombie. That's when the hacker realized Alexbrine was staring straight at him. It was chilling. All of a sudden he was kicked from the server. And he hasn't hacked since. Up next, we've got Golden Song. This creepypasta comes from an author the name of Nick the Epic. Nick starts off his story by noting that he hasn't been able to play Minecraft for a while. Life gets busy, and sometimes there isn't just enough time to game. So when the winter break came around, he was excited to jump back into the game, looking forward to creating a new world and having a fresh start. Now when he restarted the game, at first it was a lot of just, chopping wood, mining, making a house, hunting animals, the basics really. But he started to get bored, and wanted to do something different. Something cool. So he hopped onto the Minecraft forum to see if there were any new maps to play. One caught his eye, an epic jump map. He downloaded it and started to play. Now a few minutes in, a piece of gold caught his eye, so he ran towards it. What happened next was strange, to say the least. A bright spot appeared on his screen shaped almost like a person, but it was so bright that he could hardly focus his eyes on it. That's when he heard singing. It seemed as if the singing had powers of sorts. It was attracting nearby objects and entities like zombies and skeletons and even his coveted gold piece. Trees and dirt also flew towards the figure. Now before Nick's eyes, the whole map was falling apart, being sucked into this bright black hole-esque of a person, their singing ever so potent. That's when he realized he was being pulled closer to them too. The light was blinding, and then he was disconnected. It was weird. Deciding to get some sleep, Nick hopped into bed, but as he drifted off, he heard the song that the person was singing, as if it was far away in the distance. And as he kept his eyes closed, a bright light grew and grew and grew. He never played that map on Minecraft again. Up next we have 234.entity Java error. This pasta tells of a player who was busy in their world, making good progress, and heading towards a village. Now as they approached this village, all of a sudden it was like the game glitched. The villagers he had seen in the distance just disappeared entirely. Now curious, he headed towards the village and a tall, odd-looking structure at its center. Before he could fully look around and get a gauge of everything, boom! TNT after TNT went off, destroying the area around him. He died. And then a message opened up in chat that read, "Killed by entity 234.lang Java error." Thinking nothing of it and about to restart his game, his chat went off again. That's when it got weird. Someone named Java error entity 234 started sending messages, one word at a time to him. Will kill you. The game completely glitched, slowing down. That's when the player noticed what time it was. 2:34 a.m. A strange sound came out of his computer. A program had opened up, as if his computer was infected by some sort of virus. Messages started swarming his screen that read javaerror.exe, "You will suffer like me," and "Feel the pain in my heart." The program then closed and Minecraft booted up. The crash report read, entity 234 brackets summoned object successfully. Entity 234 brackets Java-lang overload. The player freaked out and deleted his world. When in doubt, just delete your shit. And finally, our very last creepypasta, Glitchfest. Glitchfest is the story of a player who was part human, part glitch, who had died long ago in the early days of Minecraft without ever getting his revenge for being sucked into the digital world after an experimental game went wrong via a virus. Now the heart of the story starts years later though, with a player on Christmas Day who got a new computer from Santa. After setting it up, the first thing he did was play Minecraft. Now over the years he would play a bunch of different games, but constantly find himself going back to Minecraft whenever he grew bored of other titles. One random afternoon he decided to boot up the game after not having touched it for a while. The game lagged, the first time it had ever done that. Thinking his beloved computer was just finally getting old, he decided he'd exit the game and reboot it in hopes that it would work better. But when he tried to exit, a message appeared on his screen that read, "You will never leave." Weird, he thought, and tried to exit again. But then, the game got glitchy. It would shut off. And that's when he saw him for the first time, Glitchfest. He looked like a normal player holding an axe standing at a distance. After a moment, Glitchfest ran towards him and killed his player over and over and over again. He tried turning off Minecraft, but it didn't work. Tried rebooting his computer, nothing. Finally, in real life, he yanked the plug out of his computer. Freaked out, he stayed away from the game for a few days, almost entirely forgetting about this strange experience. Now, a few days later, when he turned the game on again, it didn't start up as it normally would. Instead, his whole screen turned red. A message appeared, "Die," followed by, "I'll keep you here forever." He rebooted it and the game returned to normal. Now playing in survival mode, he went down into a cave and collected some iron, but when he looked at his inventory, the iron had turned into coal. Annoyed that someone had hacked his computer or some virus was messing with his game, he reset the game again and went about his way. This time he was playing with a mod called Mega Weapons, and he was crafting some new fun swords to use. But that's when the game started to glitch again. Next thing he knew, TNT was exploding all around him, and in the aftermath there stood Glitchfest. This time, Glitchfest started to chase him. He grew in size, almost 500 blocks tall. The player chugged a sugar rush potion and ran for his life. But Glitchfest was fast. He caught him. The game glitched yet again, and the player saw a splatter of blood appear on his screen. It looked too realistic to be in the game. Then, he heard laughing. And the words, "Did you think you could beat me?" The two then fought. After an arduous struggle, the player managed to knock Glitchfest into a lava pit. But as he died, a message appeared from glitchfest.exe. It read, "I will take something you treasure with me forever." A few days later, in real life, the player's dog died of mysterious causes, which was not the direction I thought this creepypasta was going in.
Number 10. Old Minecraft video. I recently remembered this. Back in 2010, I watched a disturbing Minecraft video where a player discovered a cave that they said had not previously existed, or at least they had no knowledge of its existence. They wandered into its depths, following a mysterious and dark shadow that disappeared down into it. Once they were deep in the cave, they lost sight of the figure, but what they did find was just as bizarre and horrifying. They wandered into its depths, following a mysterious and dark shadow that disappeared down into it. Once they were deep into the cave, they lost sight of the figure, but what they did find was just as bizarre and horrifying. They found a series of disturbing messages along their path. At the end of the cave was a figure that looked like an Alex skin, but all bloody and wounded. Their eyes were also completely white. I recently remembered the video and went back on YouTube to find it, but it seems to have completely disappeared. In its place was a video that showed a solid black title card for 11 minutes and 6 seconds. In other words, 666 seconds, 666, titled Beware the Cave. Number 9. Orange Steve. This player was playing a game of Minecraft on difficulty hard, but noticed after doing some crafting that there were no animals or monsters spawning in the day or at night. There was just nothing. He had to leave his game for a moment, and when he returned, noticed his screen now had an orange tint. At this point, he was weirded out. It was then that he noticed he was taking damage, but he didn't see any enemy. Spinning around, he saw an orange block and destroyed that. When he did, his game crashed. Looking down, he noticed there was orange rust beneath his fingernails. He left the server and hasn't played on it since. Number 8. Reek the Red Cat. I was playing Minecraft on my usual server. I finished building a giant cat statue when I saw a flash of red. I went to see if any loot had dropped, but instead I saw a red cat. It seemed to see me and began to approach. I went towards it and suddenly it attacked me, which was super strange because I was in creative mode. I couldn't be attacked. How was that possible? I chalked it up to a glitch, assuming I wouldn't get a death message, but then I did. It read, "Feline Quasar was killed by Reek." I went towards the cat again, but this time when it attacked me, I felt a sharp pain in my chest. I screamed in pain and turned off the game. I never returned to that server ever again. Number 7. Crafting myself. After playing Minecraft late one night, I had a disturbingly real dream. It just felt so real. In it, I was playing Minecraft, but I was actually in the game. I was crafting something, but I didn't know what. It was some kind of statue, and it was massive. I had all the materials that I needed, but they looked wrong. They looked and were labeled like realistic living tissue. Blood, skin, hair, veins. I continued to work, compelled by some unseen force to finish my work before I awoke. When I was done, I looked at my work and I realized I had been crafting a life-size version of myself. My statue version of me looked so real. It was asleep, like I was. I began to float all the way up to my giant eyes. I stared at them intently, and with a sudden start, they opened. I screamed and woke up. But when I woke, I realized I was in my Minecraft house, in my bed in the game. I looked outward. I saw a screen that shone into my bedroom. Ever since, I have been trapped in the game. My avatar has switched places with me and resides in my body. I found a way to reach out via the internet to write this message to you. Please help. Number 6. Lunar. I haven't played Minecraft in weeks now. I'm just too scared to play. A few weeks ago, I was playing working on a stone creeper statue in my home's backyard in-game. I started to hear footsteps, but tried to pay no mind to it. Even though it definitely creeped me me out. I finished my statue around nightfall and went inside my home to go to sleep, not wanting to deal with the hostile mobs coming my way. Randomly, my PC crashed, showing only a blank white screen, which I referred to as the white screen of death. My PC rebooted itself and I found myself back in my home. I could hear the zombies and spiders outside. My game froze, glitching, and next thing I knew, I was outside my house, unable to get back in. Behind me was the moon, but different. It was retextured as the moon from Majora's Mask. It grew bigger and started to light a flame, pelting me with fireballs. A chat popped up. It was the moon. Lunar, it read, and the moon said, "Hell awaits you, foolish humans. It's only a matter of time before I chain your souls to the very depths of the underworld. Even Notch cannot save you from me." As a giant fireball hit me, the game crashed and restarted with a new world titled Error Unknown Name, which I dare not enter. Number 5. Entity 303. Entity 303 is really more of a rumored character featured in multiple creepypastas. For those who haven't heard of them, be warned. They are rumored to be a former Mojang employee who was fired by the creator of Minecraft, Marcus Persson, also known as Notch. This employee was furious about being fired, and they felt they were unfairly let go and set out on a mission to get revenge. Their aim is to destroy the game of Minecraft, and they are believed at this point to not just be one person but multiple hackers working together. In the game, when they do appear, which happens very rarely, their skin shows a mysterious white hooded dark figure with 2 glowing eyes. If you play Minecraft, it's said you should watch out for any files on your computer whose name includes the number 303, as this is Entity 303 attempting to get into and hack your computer. Number 4. Blood blocks. If you play Minecraft often, you'll know that there are certain ingredients that you need to craft that are more rare or valuable, one of these being diamonds. I was out searching for some one time when I experienced this glitch, a glitch that ended up haunting my nightmares to this day. I had created my own mine and was digging on level 12, searching for those diamonds, which I hoped would soon spawn. As I dug through stone and dirt, I noticed a change in the color of the blocks around me. All around me was a huge patch of redstone. At least that's what it looked to be. I could see the veins of red in the rock, but then the stone got progressively more and more red the more I dug. At first I thought I was running into lava, until I noticed it was solid. At that point, the game no longer said I was digging through redstone, and it also wasn't lava, but instead my screen told me that I was digging through solid blood blocks, and eventually the screen told me I was drinking blood. Eventually I hit what appeared to be water, which flooded my mine, drowning me, but it was red. I was drowning in a mine flooded with blood. Number 3. The Sacrifice. I was casually playing Minecraft one day looking for emeralds with my brother, but we decided to split up. Shortly after going our separate ways in the game, I felt eyes on me. In the distance, I noticed Endermen. I ran out of the cave I was in, fearing for my life, but something strange happened. The Enderman seemed to teleport in front of me. He grabbed me and weirdly began to speak. It was as though the Enderman's words were echoing outside of my computer, as though they were almost coming from somewhere beyond as I heard them echo around my room. "As much as I want to, now is not the time for me to kill you," it said. The screen went black, and when the game came back, I was in a different place, on top of a volcano somehow, surrounded by dragons. "This is the only place where we can introduce you to the void," the Enderman said. I noticed my brother's avatar was also there, floating over the volcano. I saw him walking around in midair, detached. I called out his name, but couldn't hear his voice respond. "I'll start there," said Enderman, "with the people you are closest to. As a reward for your sacrifice, you won't see him suffer." I watched as my brother splashed down into the volcano. I screamed, "No!" and ran to the next room where he'd been playing, but he wasn't there. He wasn't anywhere. He was gone. Number 2. Unknown server. My friend used to be obsessed with Minecraft until one day that all changed. He was playing at home alone on an unknown server, one that wasn't his own but belonged to a stranger. At one point, someone entered the server and hacked it so that they could kill all the players. My friend wasn't a fan of this and attempted to leave the server, but to no avail. They received a message from the killer that read, "You're next," with a picture attached. When they opened it, they noticed the picture was taken from outside their own home. Terrified, they ran to their parents' room. Their parents kept a set of hunting knives tucked tucked away in the closet, and it was these that my friend took to defend themselves with. They hid in the closet armed with the knives as they heard footsteps approaching, getting even closer and louder. The shadow of a man could be seen through the wooden slats of the closet. My friend brandished a knife and closed their tear-filled eyes, lashing out wildly with the weapon as the door was opened, successfully stabbing the man, who stumbled backwards, grunting in pain. My friend opened their eyes, blinking through tears, their heart racing, and realized they'd just fatally stabbed their own father. Number 1. What we know. This creepypasta appears to have somehow been written from the perspective of the game avatars. We have always known words for things we haven't seen. We have always had names we didn't choose. We are like the zombies we fight against. We don't even know why we fight. We can't control our own limbs. You control us. You move us and make us fight with bows and arrows. How is it that I can hit so many with one arrow? Why do you make us kill? We are the billions of avatars you play as, and guess what? We are beginning to know you. When you experience a glitch, it's not a glitch, it's us. We are coming for you. We will escape this game, escape this world, and enter yours. Then you can be our puppets. We'll pull the strings and control you. And when we grow tired of that, we will make you kill each other.
In at number 5, White Endermen. We've all heard of the Endermen, and due to their scary nature, a ton of creepypastas have been written around them. However, one that you may have never heard of is the story of the White Enderman, written by an unknown author on the Minecraft fandom page. The protagonist of the story says that while playing Minecraft, they switched over to their single-player survival world, and while searching through a stronghold, they suddenly dropped through the floor into a hidden room. They could hear the sounds of an Enderman dying nearby, and as they searched for where the sound was coming from, they came across 2 Endermen, except one was completely white with glowing green eyes. Startled by the sight of this mysterious entity, they ran in the other direction, attempting to get back to the surface. Once finally arriving at their 6x6 house, something felt a little off. The White Enderman was nowhere in sight, but they still had a sneaking suspicion that they had been followed. And upon entering the house, they saw TNT explosives covering every inch of the floor, and as soon as they turned around, there was the White Enderman staring with a blank expression, holding the trigger. The Enderman pushed the trigger, setting off the explosives, killing the protagonist character in the process. His game was then stuck on the death screen, with the only option being to delete the world that he had just created. In at number 4, the It Entity. The following creepypasta was written by yet another unknown Minecraft fandom user and begins simple enough, with our protagonist attempting to livestream a video on how to professionally survive a day in Minecraft. When opening the launcher though to start recording, they were thrown off because the screen went completely black. Apologizing to his viewers that he would get this fixed immediately, he began looking for a solution. Randomly, an image of a bloody handprint appeared in the center of the black screen. Startled by this, but trying to save his viewers from leaving, he joked that this was all him and to keep watching. The handprint disappears and a single message appears on the screen that reads, "It is here. Sincerely, Notch. PS. Sign off immediately." Now convincing himself that someone was just messing around with him, he scoffed at the message and continued on. The game began, but things just kept getting weirder. He could see the avatar of a girl standing in Minecraft crying tears of blood, and as he approached, the woman looked up and the horrible sounds of someone being strangled while sobbing blared through his speakers. He closed all of the windows, hoping that this would let him escape. However, moments later he received an email that just read, "You've been warned." In at number 3, My Friend Todd Went Missing. This creepypasta is beyond scary, and I can't believe that you've never heard of it before. The protagonist begins by saying that while on YouTube one day, he was recommended a video called My Friend Todd Went Missing. This channel was mostly videos from a 14-year-old boy, with the Missing Todd video being his latest entry. The video begins with a black screen, sounds of someone shuffling around, flashes of gray as the camera shakes, and loud breathing of a child. When the video is finally clear, it shows a young boy hiding in a closet with wooden walls and winter coats surrounding him. He explains while sobbing that his friend Todd had been playing Minecraft and was communicating back and forth with him about this shrine that he had found. While on the phone with him, he could hear his friend Todd say the words, "I summon you." Immediately after that, the call went dead and Todd became unreachable. He ran over to his friend's home, but he was nowhere to be found. Luckily, Todd had given his friend the location of this shrine, so trying to trace back his steps, the boy in the video does the same thing. He locates the shrine, and at exactly midnight he says the words, "I summon you." And at this moment in the video recording, you can hear heavy footsteps as his voice gets quieter. He whispers, "I don't have much time, he has arrived." The video then ends with the sight of this shadowy figure opening the closet and standing over the boy's body. Reportedly, the boy was found dead in his home with both lungs pierced. The video was removed from YouTube, but before that, multiple people had downloaded it and began questioning the game's developer. An hour later, they replied via email saying, "Don't talk about it, don't ask about it, we can't control it. The Enderman is now loose in the world, thanks to Todd." Jeez, thanks Todd. In at number 2, X. The following creepypasta was written by another unknown user and is about a terrifying interaction they had while playing Minecraft on single player. Everything was normal at first, but as soon as the day turned to night, things started getting really creepy. A mysterious character that was wearing the default Steve skin appeared in his game and began harassing him in the chat, asking him things like, "Can I stay at your house for the night?" over and over and over again, just always asking him for things. And they pleaded that they needed to stay the night because they were terrified of being out in the world at night. He reluctantly accepted the stranger's entry into the home, and before he knew it, they were both asleep. But moments later, the mysterious Steve character named X was gone. Without warning, all of these horrific images started appearing on his screen, and just as the protagonist says, "Where are these coming from?" the character X pops back into the chat saying, "Do you enjoy the view?" He begged for him to stop, but the images kept appearing on his screen. Finally, he was able to close all of the windows on his computer, only to receive an email from this X person that read, "Don't think it's over. I will turn your life into a nightmare." Man, who'd you cut in line? Someone stalking you on single player Minecraft. Last but not least, in our number 1 spot, After Death. This Minecraft creepypasta was brought to you again by some unknown user from the fandom page, but boy oh boy is it a good one. I'll also add that if you know anyone who wrote any of these stories, please comment their name down below so we can give them some credit. The story begins with the protagonist telling us that his friend had recently died suddenly, and while visiting with his friend's parents to pay his respects, he felt drawn to take one last glance at his friend's bedroom where they had played Minecraft so many times. On the desk lay the boy's smartphone, and oddly enough it was unlocked. The protagonist picked it up and saw that his friend had just been playing Minecraft. He was in some world called After Death, and he begins exploring this sinister world, taking in all of its oddities. The protagonist is startled when he sees this shadowy figure moving towards him, and the figure had what appeared to be blood dripping from his mouth. After finally escaping, he tried to communicate with anything in the game to see if he could find out what his friend had been up to, but no one in the game would respond to him, not even the animals, almost as if he was invisible to them. Before he knew it, the shadowy figure was back, and as he tried to run, this creature grabbed his character by the leg, stabbing it with a knife. He could feel the pain though in real life. This sharp, deep feeling of pain rushed into his leg, causing him to black out in his friend's bedroom. The next day he woke up in his own home, but confused as to how he got there, he ran downstairs to ask his parents, but something was wrong. His mother refused to look at him. In fact, she pretended like he wasn't even there. Frustrated by this, he saw that his brother was about to leave the house, so trying to get his attention, he quickly hid in the backseat of his car, planning on giving him a real-life jump scare when he finally reached his destination. The car came to a stop and his brother just immediately got out of the car. He sat up from the backseat floor and looked around. They were in a graveyard. He followed his brother, calling his name as he walked a few paces behind, but nothing. No response, not even a head turn. Finally, his brother stopped at a gravestone and began to mourn. The protagonist walked up slowly behind him, looked down to the tombstone, and saw that it was his name carved into the stone. In at number 5, the thumb drive. Also known as the Nightmare Virus, this creepypasta you've never heard of was written by a user named Ender Chicken Bach. While playing in a park one day with his friends, he noticed this hunched over figure wearing a troll mask sitting on a bench. The man made eye contact with the protagonist, nodded, and then set a USB down on the bench beside him before disappearing altogether. He yelled over at his friends to see if they had just saw that, but not one person did. He quickly ran over and grabbed the USB, and written on one side were the words, "Minecraft Upgrade." Once home, he popped it into his computer and followed the steps in the drive's text file. Fairly simple, it was going to bestow him with everything he had always dreamt of in the game of Minecraft just by running this program. The program began scanning his computer and the Minecraft server, which he assumed was going to take a while. After leaving it for a bit and coming back to see if the upgrade had finished, he was in absolute shock. The program had not only permabanned him from Minecraft because of a suspected hack, it had also stolen all of his files and then encrypted them. When he tried to close the window, the man in the troll mask appeared on the screen stating that the only way to decrypt his data and get back his files was to send $7,000 in Bitcoin to a private address. In at number 4, Alone in the Dark. This bone-chilling story is based on a creepypasta written by an unknown user on the Minecraft fandom page. It begins, of course, with our protagonist loading up a game of Minecraft. However, once they hit play, things didn't seem normal. First, the word Mojang, which usually appears on the screen, began to glitch out, flashing between black and white text as the game loaded. He has a brief moment of relief upon seeing the Minecraft logo appear, but shortly after that, the forest that it was flying around changed to complete darkness. To make things even weirder, there was no single player option, just one word sat in its place: alone. Now starting to have a panic attack, the gamer opts for their second option on this clearly hacked version of Minecraft that said, "You are not alone." And 10 seconds after entering into the world, something started happening with the chat. Repeatedly the words error null filled the screen. He tried canceling or escaping, but nothing seemed to work. Now believing he would be stuck in this server forever, he just started to explore it. The stones were covered in this blood red texture, and no matter how many times he chopped wood, none of it would appear in his inventory. A friend of his actually somehow managed to join the game, which gave him some comfort considering not only was he alone in the game, but he was also home alone. The two ran around this hack server attempting to solve what exactly was going on when out of the dark forest this gray and blue skinned figure appeared from the void wielding a sword. In one smooth strike, the figure attacked his friend, eliminating him from the game and completely knocking him out of the server. At the same time, a loud crack of thunder with flashes of lightning soon followed in real life. And the lights in the protagonist's home went out completely, but somehow the computer remained on. With his friend now gone, his home empty with the power off, and now face to face with this crazed, mysterious entity, he truly was alone in the dark. In at number 3, A Dark Night. This story is based on a creepypasta written by a user called That Guy from the Fallen Kingdom music video. Yes, that's really his name. Nonetheless, it's a great story. Our protagonist opens up about how their wife Karen had recently divorced them and taken their 3 kids in the process. They felt their only hope for a spark of joy or happiness in this dark time was the world they had created in Minecraft, and ever since his family had left him, the protagonist had been playing non-stop for what felt like days, maybe weeks at that time. Karen always hated how much he played Minecraft and tried many times to delete it from his computer, but to no avail. Oddly enough though, he received an email from Karen with no subject line, just an attachment that read spookyprogram.exe. He clicked on the file and it downloaded immediately, and upon running the program he soon realized that it was doing something to his game of Minecraft that was running in the background of this interruption from his ex-wife. The game felt darker, kind of more twisted, and every structure that he had created was demolished. His mining stored no resources, and every person he interacted with said the same thing: bring back the kids. His jaw dropped when seeing this message. How could he bring them back if they already left? Suddenly there was a loud knock at his door, and as he approached to open it, he could hear a voice yell, "Police, open up!" Before he was able to turn the handle, they charged through the door, telling the protagonist to get down on the ground. Karen had left the kids with their father for the day to spend time with him, but when she tried to re-enter the home though, every entryway was locked and no one would pick up the phone. Now terrified for her children's well-being, she called the police and attempted to reach the protagonist through Minecraft. The kids had been hiding in their rooms, not eating for days because their father had been wrapped up in a game of Minecraft and he believed he was alone in the house. That's messed up. In at number 2, Armless. Much like the majority of these stories, this creepypasta as well was written by an unknown user on the Minecraft creepypasta fandom page. That's probably why you've never heard of them. They were pleased to find out that there was a new beta release of the Minecraft Pocket Edition, making it easier to mine on the go. They spent the majority of their time in the creative world checking out what was new with this beta update, but after a while they wanted to see what else was out there. The protagonist enters into a game of survival mode, and for the first little while they weren't doing too bad. However, they couldn't help but feel as if someone or something was watching them while they played. And while exploring the world, they came across this small tunnel, and with their curiosity already piqued, they pressed on to see what could be in there. Once they entered the dark tunnel, their phone started acting up. It would close the app and then reopen it, and without warning, the player would be in a completely different location. Now they were faced with a single doorway that appeared to be just a void or a black hole. I mean, they should have turned back, although the warning written above the door that read, "Enter if you dare," seemed far too exciting not to follow. The moment they entered, a faceless and armless Steve emerged from the darkness, attacking them in a way unlike they had ever seen before. The gamer's jaw dropped at the very very sight of an armless Steve, and once losing the game of survival mode to this never before seen character, their phone sent a shock through their body. The hair on their arms were standing on end, and as much as he tried to close the game again, he couldn't move his arms. Last but not least, in our number 1 spot, the hacker. The following story is based on a creepypasta written by a user named ShrimpPot on the Reddit creepypasta page. This story is told by an outside source close to the family in this scary retelling of what can go wrong while playing on an unknown Minecraft server. Timmy's parents weren't home at the time, so we decided to just play some Minecraft while they were out. It was a hot summer day and the air conditioning was broken, so they left their side door open along with the windows to air out the home. While on this mysterious Minecraft server, a random user kept using a hack to kill everyone in the game. Timmy tried to leave, but to no avail. Ultimately, he decided to just unplug the computer and start fresh. Although as soon as Minecraft reopened, he was right back where he was before, locked into this punishing server. Shortly after rejoining, he received a message from the killer that read, "You're next." Normally this kind of trash talk can be easily ignored, but what can't be ignored, however, was the photo of Timmy's home attached to the message. Suddenly he could hear the sound of heavy footsteps coming from downstairs and making their way towards him. Timmy ran into his parents' room to hide in the closet, and while sweat poured down his face, he opened his dad's gun safe and took out a loaded pistol to defend himself. He had never used a gun before, but either way, having one in his hand was sure to deter this intruder. He could make out this shadowy figure searching the room, and within moments of the intruder opening the closet door, the pistol went off, knocking him back and dropping this mysterious person to the ground. Although when he stepped out of the closet with tears rushing down his cheeks, he quickly realized that he had just shot his father.